So, yeah, Namis recommended us to have just like to record something.
Yeah.
So we are doing it.
Thank you, Namis.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
No one does. Here we are.
And we didn't plan any topic. But usually our conversations flow, and I guess it will come to I guess whatever duration the recording would be, it would be too short to cover up everything we will want to talk about.
I've got a thought,
Yeah.
an impression of something.
Yeah.
Should I just let it come through?
Why not?
Okay. So I apologize first. I'm a little late to show up here because I was on another call. But I'm going to bring something from that call that's very... it's got me on a journey already, so I might as well bring it into this journey. And it is, what if we are the keepers of life? And that is to say, what if we are more than ever coming into being the custodians to life force on Earth within ourselves, and on Earth as ourselves, the caretakers from the micro to the macro of how this energy promotes life as we know it and beyond. And we were talking about scorpions and eagles just now. So included in that is how could a human being, almost as a God-driven creator being, hold focus to be a keeper of life, custodian, on such a vast scale? Are we capable of it now? Have we arrived there?
You asking as if this is like it is somewhere we should arrive sometime?
Well, within this conversation that I came out of, it's one part of a potential from this land as an offering to humanity to come actually through involvement of other energies and other forces to bring us into this custodianship if we are indeed ready. And I just kept thinking, am I even at this point custodian of my own life force energy? And beyond that, could I assist any further on Earth?
I'm not familiar with the term custodian.
Like, it could be like a keeper, a guardian, someone who wishes to guide something effectively and holds it like a librarian or wisdom keeper.
So it sounds to me in this question there is a suggestion as if we should come at some point to readiness to take that role. And I'm questioning, is it necessarily so? Maybe it's just if someone wants and not about readiness. And and to be keepers of life, that by itself also can be in many ways interpreted. Like I can see many paradoxes in that definition, keeper of life.
So maybe just to clarify, because I know I'm also talking to a being who has lived as close to nature as, or is as close to nature more than any being that I know. So the suggestion in this former call was that it goes to the nuances of how at the moment nature beings, should we call them fairies or other beings, might involve themselves in the flow of energies to the plants, how plant relates to bee, how it goes into all the web of life. That's the keeper term in this story.
So it directly relates to like you say, fairies and like beings that are non-organic in a way. So it's even more vaguing for me, the term. Actually, it's less clarifying, the term keepers of life.
So again, so what if at present, life force, vitality, life energy on the planet as it forms, as it runs a currency through us, animal life, plant life, and so forth, what if it had some management unseen to us? What if for a long time it had been out of our hands for our consciousness and the evolution of our hearts, even our compassion or willingness to provide such a service, or had not been in place? So it's like, could we have evolved to that degree that we now sense into holding?
So that again goes exactly to the, like you say, what if, and you're suggesting a certain idea, but this idea is exactly where the suggestion, it's kind of justifying the suggestion that we should come to readiness at some point to evolve there. But it is what if, because what if it is not so? And that's basically my question. Maybe it is not so, and how can we come to finer clarity rather than lean on suggestions that, I mean, maybe there is a certain quality of beauty in it, but it doesn't necessarily make it more so than different versions, and that's why I question it. I mean, maybe it is. It's not that I say it is not so, but that's the original question. Because it sounds like a suggestion rather than a question. If do I want to be a keeper of life? Like, do I want to tell myself a story that this is my reality? It's kind of suggesting that this is reality. Am I willing to acknowledge it? Like, but then there is less freedom of perception in that sense, as I perceive it, or freedom of interpretation, and maybe there is wisdom in that I not yet realize, that allows more freedom of interpretation, but so far I'm still questioning it, and the suggestions that you just said, yeah, but it's the same. It keeps it on the same. Like, what I would suggest is that life is like a plain paper, that no story is written yet, and we can create whatever variations we want, and that is a possibility that we grow to become custodian. It's one story we can write. We can write completely different story as well. And what is more true, that needs a whole other way to comparing, because every story by itself can be completely true if this is my belief. But then it is subjective truth, and it's not expanding the perception into inter-subjective or trans-subjective, more to say, even like towards objective, which is never absolute, but that's the direction.
How do we arrive at the blank piece of paper and realizing, or not being in perhaps some terror at the staring into that blankness and the potential that it holds?
So I think this is a paradox, because we cannot stare at the blank paper, because we are already, the fact there is an I, it's already part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact I am staring at the paper, it is part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
The fact there is paper and the perceiver of it. So it's absurd.
You need paper?
No.
I'll take the paper.
Yeah.
So, as an artist,
Yeah.
I'm often here staring into the blankness.
Mm-hmm.
And the terror that I refer to is and was my own initial reluctance and fear to initiate this story or this engagement with the unknown. Also, if I can bring the keepers of life and energy force into it, I believe it was much due to the fact that I was not entirely present within this field, which is looking at the blank field. And I was rather new to relating to anything to a great degree, for I wasn't present to myself and my life force. So, as you handed me this piece of paper, you've changed the course of her story. It's not his story, it's her story after all. So I'm going to totally catapult this dialogue into change of her story and history. Can we change history at this point?
Why not? It's just a story.
Mm-hmm. What's your story, his story? Do you have a story, Aviv? Do you want to tell me a story?
Well, we each have our subjective story, and it is complex, because part of the story is also there are degrees of classification of pieces of the story.
Oh, okay.
Like we learn to repress, we learn to forget, and then we also remember, but possibly selectively, pieces. And so it becomes way more complex in that sense. We can complicate it as much as human creativity can take us to, and I think we are doing it, we people. And within that, so we have our subjective story, but there is also the collective story. And of course there are many cultures, and each culture have its own mythology, and there are degrees of power, maybe to say, to different types of mythologies. So like the monotheistic mythology have somewhat more power than more ancient mythologies.
What does monotheistic mean?
Monotheistic, the like Christianity, like the
Okay.
Abrahamic religions, like the
Right.
idea there is mono, like one
The singular.
theist,
Right.
like one God, like,
Right.
which all other gods are just aspects of that one, like, and the idea of the archetype of ego, in a
Yeah.
way, like of so it have in a way much power because it holds certain truth that is one more step deeper. Of course it can exclude the previous, like the Crusades excluded the pagan or the tribals, but it can include and just become more whole, or rationality as well as even more truth. It's not about an entity, it's objective, and that by itself also is a type of mythology. So there was the Big Bang and whatever, and many minds are in a way taught this mythology. Like it have more power, it means it have more potential to include more minds in it, relative to a tribal mythology that not all humanity goes there. The monotheistic, more of humanity can go there. The rational, more even. And at this point, it seems like humanity is searching for a mythology that we all can unite in. And at the same time that we are creating it, our education, like we are like our subjective story is a product of the culture, of the collective story that is telling itself through us. So as I see it, part of the telling of my story, or the I story in general, of any subject, comparing to his story or her or their, like, third person, it's like the first person perspective story, is in order to include in that story also the effect of the collective story in this time that we are, that globalization is already beginning, thanks to the ability to think rationally, to think transculturally, just like with basic principles of what is reality, focus on truth rather than righteousness or morality that is according to a specific book that we need to believe, and doubt is a sin. So a belief that is based on always doubt, because the theory can always improve. There is some more humility in it.
Yeah.
And because of that, it have more power that can also give us a certain deeper understanding of ourselves as a product of the collective. So yeah.
I'm just getting a scene from a movie in my head, and I've got this image. So what if we were to what if there was a way that we could burn away our collective history to date? There's a scene in the last Star Wars movie, and I always go to those with my son and rather enjoy them. They've come to the Wisdom Keeper and found the books.
To
and the
burn
Jedis.
The collective.
So the Jedis had the wisdom books, and they kept them on a very sacred, secret island. And the Jedi wisdom is much, and it has to be recorded, because that's their story. It's the story of wisdom up until now. But the great Jedi himself decided to clear it away, and so it was destroyed. So what if there was no collective story anymore, and we came back to being something of an unwritten page? Then what?
So
where could we begin then?
I see two levels of interpreting what you say. One is more on the symbolic, like more superficial. And it reminds the Roman strategy, for example, conquer a nation, translate all their script to Roman, burn the original,
Right.
and then rewrite whatever mythology. But that's the more superficial. If I will take it literally, so this is actually a paradox, because the concept we can even burn something is an outcome of the collective story. and even going further, the idea of I, what is I, and like our vocabulary, the fact we have verbs and nouns, and like, so we define an action, and there is the subject that is doing the action. It's like that our way of thinking is already influenced by a deeper story that is, I think, written in the crystallization of space-time itself. It's like we cannot get rid of it, because this is what creates what we know as ourselves, and it's like
And we need this crystallization as a starting point for any given storytelling, right?
I don't know if I would use the word need, but every storytelling is differentiated from that crystallization. It's just happening from.
Would it be potent for the storytellers around the given story to be as diversified in that cross-seeding, cross-culturally? So, we shake up the kaleidoscope of those that are the storytellers enough, significantly enough, for there not to be an identifiable storyteller, but it is a field of storytellers.
Who are those who are the storytellers that you refer to?
So they would be plucked out of multifold cultures globally to arrive at the same white page to ignite the story that is untold up until this moment. They have no reference to each other or each other's culture, and their mission, if they should accept it, pun, is to come up with a new story. And their mythology is also variable. Their religious identity, if there is any, is also variable.
So so this is for me also. It's on the superficial level. It's already an outcome of the real story that is told through us, and it's like a sub story. It's not a real burning of the 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 story that because the fact there is we is an outcome of the story. So we cannot do anything out of the story. It's like it's an absurd. So we can, on the more superficial level, yeah, we can rewrite a story, tell it differently, but and of course we can repress the past. We can forget. We can classify some parts and rewrite a new story that might serve better the situation as it is. Yet in and whatever beauty we can imagine that story would hold. So transculturalism, yeah, there is beauty in it, and the idea of restarting because of accumulation of mistakes, but part of the story is also the deleting of some parts of the story. This is classified.
Right.
It's never fully deleted. No information is lost. And then in a later stage of that, if the trajectory is into greater wholeness, so that information would be needed to remembered and reintegrated.
Right.
So to me it makes sense to already not delete anything, but to just like already find a way to integrate everything and grow beyond, not instead.
I actually I deeply appreciate where you're coming from, because now I feel like my white piece of paper is me as an arrogant artist bypassing my history, messy as it is or can be, but with all its beauty as much as possible, and that I simply swallow all of that, and from that trust that I may still originate something with more, now I come back to the keepers of life, with more embodied, vital life force, full of all the most primary elemental goodness that it can have to set me on that trajectory, holding true to my generations and my ancestry, and listening to all that wisdom, for better or worse, and still know that I may originate in whatever way that is a more vital, vibrant, goodness story.
Yeah, maybe if I will try to visualize a traditional story, so I can see the shape of a tree, for example, or thunder, or the how the blood vessel, it doesn't, but tree is, for example, there is the trunk, and then there are branches, and then there are secondary branches, and then like they are smaller and smaller, but they all come from that one source. And in a way, every culture is a certain branch, and then sub-variations of the culture. But all the story of life that is experiencing itself through us, beyond every specific person, is coming from the same trunk. And every branch of the tree is adding to its fullness. And every branch can bring a flower or fruit, or like can have beauty, and it's not about cutting any branch of it. And yes, keep evolving everything, but I think acknowledging the trunk, acknowledging the source, actually allows even more nourishment to that branch, in a way, like more motivation to grow, because the the there is no branch that is competing with other branches. It's one creation of many stories parallel, and one story can go to completely different direction than another story, like completely different, and have a whole thing there. Yet the fact of telling a story in the first place, this is part of, I think, our human creativity, which is that aspect of life that creates itself. And I think beauty is definitely a guideline in it. It's like even naturally. But I think also truth is also a guideline. It's also like a vector. And remembering the trunk, like the source, I think supports both, actually. Also the beauty. I find there is some, from a wide perception, it can bring another aspect of symmetry. Maybe not if I focus on that specific story, the source might not necessarily be relevant for the depth of beauty. But at least I think I have a tendency to want to look wide at every possibility first before I choose something.
I'm just, as you're talking, maybe it's because somebody outside gave me one mushroom to eat before I came in here, and I'm not sure what was in that mushroom, but I feel like that tree now. As you're talking about the tree, I'm inside that which is like the sap, the essence of a tree. And I'm sitting in the essence of being so proud of all of my stories, because I'm the trunk, because I'm the ancient holder of, I'm listening to my roots. Primarily, I'm there, but I'm also aware of all the rhythms going on, of the sound of the birds around all of my branches, of everything incoming from air, from water. And I'm holding all these tribes of all these branches.
Mm-hmm.
And if they all remember to come back to me, then they can all live together as their separate identities, if they wish. It feels very harmonious and tearfully, beautifully so.
Yeah, I think this is also an inspiration for the definition of self, that is not necessarily stagnated into identity, such as a specific religion or nationality or gender or race, like something of these categories, but also like kind of finer aspect of identity that is also not even um, looking for an individuality,
Right.
like for a self that is distinguished from
Yes.
like me and the world.
Mm.
It does. I don't need even to grossly define the stereotype of my identity. Just like the fact there is a self that is separated, and and the self in a way is made of, oh, it's like a fractal of the hologram. It have all of it in, and it's actually, there is no separate self. It's just like life expressing itself through.
Yeah.
And I think this is
That's what I'm feeling.
this is
I've let go of my story. I don't need to have a story. I'm actually far more invested in the oneness of all my branches than having any holding upon my own given part in this equation.
so
I don't even know where it is. I've lost it. And I like it.
well, it is a tool. It can be used, yet it's just that greater ability to integrate all the pieces and not being overly identified with a specific piece, such as whatever I would define as myself.
Yeah.
I think this is an outcome of the ability to think rationally, the inspiration of it to the definition of self, comparing to like the monotheistic, for example, it brought the idea of the one that is this is the only one God, that is the true God. So as a echo of that, then, oh, there is the individual self, like that part that is really me, which then we say, okay, that would be the authority. But that authority can be, like, it is conditioned by whatever unconscious aspects. So it's actually tending to be way more egocentric than before that. Like the idea, like, I do that because I feel that's what I want. And yet what I feel that I want, or what I think is right, it is conditioned by my limited perception, and that most of it is unconscious. So then perceiving the reality as or like consciousness in a way as something that integrates all the aspects, and it inspiring the self, as there is not an individual. It's just constellation of all the parts, and it's more like a wave rather than like what is now expressing more. Yet the ability to hold it together as a consciousness, like that maybe to call it wisdom piece, is to yet speak. It's not, because it can also regress to even just impulsively what I feel now, this is me, and an hour later this is me. But I'm referring to a consciousness that can beyond time integrate that knows all its fluctuations and all its even potential possible fluctuations that have never been, and recognize the unifying aspect as the self, that happening through.
Yeah, because I'm,
Mm-hmm.
given that I'm a previous filmmaker, so I'm just holding on to that vision that I'm in the tree, I am the tree, and I'm feeling the various life forms around me, the birds and I want to come into identification or perspective from a certain aspect of me, then perhaps in this reality I can flow into being the perception of this falcon that's on the tree,
Mm.
and I can, through this eye, become the eye of that moment, of that given time, because as I relate to all, I see that that eye and that perspective can offer much surveillance on the prevailing life at that moment, and I am given all the affirmation and the wellness of seeing through the one that is this one, and yet a moment later I may say farewell and thank you to that perspective and flow again to being a leaf. For somewhere in the equation of life, I know myself wanting to also humbly, and I use the, humbly and gracefully go into the meditation of being leaf for a given moment with a different composition of elements going on. Maybe it's more subtle or more, it's it's even just knowing itself as a chemical equation. It's not even perceiving anything, it's just being. I mean, that would be such a gift to me, I think, to live like that. And yet there's no one I story in any of this. It is forever
Well, for something to
moving.
know itself, there must be an I in it.
Okay, glitch in my story. Okay. So, okay. So could the I be the elements? Could I, could I be an elemental I, and therefore I am part of everything? And I'm 7 elements. Let's say the story gets bigger. I'm not simply the 4 of the equation as the story is on Earth at the moment. What if I'm more?
Well, to me, it seems more um, effective because like, more effective to define the I as objective as possible and
Mm-hmm.
not to try to decorate it or what would I define the I? Who is the definer?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like to come to simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, I think it is simplifying itself with, yes, there is the absolute I, that there is no I but that I, that is the ultimate subject, and every someone
Mm-hmm.
is like a branch of that, is differentiated from it. It's whether it is acknowledged or not. It's like it can be called God, or it can be called the Brahman, or whatever, the Buddha mind, or universe, whatever. It doesn't matter the name. Um, so yeah, there is that. To define myself as that, it's like I am still defining it from a very relative perspective. Like I am speaking through a human body. I am speaking in a specific space and time, like location, situation, and yes, the absolute is saying it anyway in it's like it's just in the existence of everything. It's not that I need to say that I as separate I or a relative I, even to say not separate, but not the absolute, because every one that says that one is the absolute contradicting itself in the sense that not fully, it's not 100% false, but it would be more true to define the self in the specific relations, or like what makes it in the specific nuances that makes it relative. So yeah, I am in a human form, so I'm a human,
Yeah.
and maybe I can have a memory or imagination of whatever. Still, these words are spoken from such body, and then also the definition of the persona, of the identity, like more on the grosser aspect, then I think it's more efficient just to make it simple. It's not like to identify with any, it's just to keep it on the form of the matter and the story so far.
Sofa. Just the sofa, yeah.
Yeah, what brought it until now, until we are sitting on this sofa. And yes, the story can be edited and changed. Yeah, there are some elements that we all have agreement. Like, for example, I was born from a specific mother that was seeded by a specific father, and also from that mother there are specific whatever number of siblings, and like I was studying in this school or working in this job, and like I can decorate it in whatever way I want to whatever reason, and there are functionalities and applications to these aspects, but I find it most efficient to just make it simple. And it's like the absolute is not something I need to take care of. It's beyond my ability to hold or grasp.
So it feels like you're commenting almost on my my journey on Earth, which has rejected this coming home that you speak of. So I'm now going to refer it to this simplicity, this simply allowing for what is here and now and returning to that from and landing, much used terminology, to land there, because I have had a flighty imagination of the many stories that I could be outside of that mother-father seeding earth story. And I believe I'm not singular in that, because I sense many who are of a spiritual variety. We start to navigate a lot of stories. It gets quite complex, and you're suggesting to me simplicity that before perhaps this 54th year on Earth would have been again rejected, because it means I can't fly away to another more abstract story like the one I had with the tree.
No.
So here I am now.
No. It's not that you can't.
Or
It's there are three layers of the self. There is the absolute, and like I think eventually it doesn't need even mentioning, because it's like we have nothing to do with it. There is, and then there is relative, but there is the human form, and yeah, to keep it in simplicity, like you are in a female body. Most of human bodies are male or female. There are some minorities of different nuances, and there are some who try to change also, and but in its most simplicity, it's like it can be defined like that. And you were born in a specific culture, and you were educated in a specific school, and it's not that you need to identify as that. It's not that you need to identify as a specific gender or race or nationality, but it is part of the story that have been creating this body. Yet there is another layer, intermediate layer between the body and the absolute, that can be the soul. And this is whatever you imagine and whatever story you want to tell yourself, you're moving between all the possibilities. This is like...
So I may aspire through my soul to a new frequency of reality that owns all of this, that is at home with it, holding it, even the trauma of it, or various degrees that story has brought my nervous system its treasures. Shall I say?
You can tell yourself the story as trauma, or you can tell it in different ways.
A celebration of life,
or teaching.
And from that, that's my mulch. That's my good fertile soil for now, without bypassing it, allowing my imagination to dream up a new variety of the story, keeping closely connected to what is.
When you dream in the night, you or whatever time of when you dream, you can experience your body in many different forms. You can experience your body as a human form that is very similar. You can experience it as completely different, like male in a different time. You can experience it as a different type of creature, maybe even legendary, such as dragon or something in different planet. You can experience it as the sun itself, or as nothingness that is conscious. You can you have a lot of freedom of definition of self relative to this body. Yet, in a way, and I find it efficient to define it as soul, comparing to the body, the human body, because the human body is a sub part of the soul. Like, of course, it can be perceived oppositely, that the soul is an imagination, an identity that is, but we can also tell the story oppositely, that the body, this is a dream that we wake up to repetitively, but everything we perceive is anyway imagination. It's like also now that the sensors perceive some sensory like sensation, but the reality is the interpretation of it, and it is conditioned by our imagination, our ability to imagine, or like it's or how.
Are we agreeing upon this hallucination enough in order to have this conversation?
So when we agree upon whatever aspect of reality, we are actually creating a reality that is more objective.
Is it growing itself more? Can it become matter?
Yeah,
if we
so this is my suggestion, that this is what makes matter, that like where we can experience inability to apply our will. It's like I wanna put my hand through the couch, but it just stops here, for example, because it is the this world in a way is the average of the sum of all the minds that are creating it. And I can go to dream when it's just my own creation, and there I have the most absolute freedom I can have, that is limited only by my ability to imagine. I think dimensionality is the core element that expand our freedom to imagine. So then if we gather a group, which can be any ethnos, like it can be whatever identity define the group together, we create a dream we are living, and we make it more true. It's the base of every culture, of every religion, of every nationality. And there can be groups that also are exclusive and accepting only people from a certain race, or only from a specific sex, or only from a specific belief system. And like, so we can stagnate an identity in that way. And I think I find more aesthetics in creating a culture that is more, it's transcending all these relativities of definitions, and acknowledging at least, at minimum, our being as earth. And in a way that even not exclude other types of life, like not only humans. And I don't know how to define it fully, because I don't have the language necessarily to communicate with every life form. But cognitively, because not every life form have
wow.
that.
Wow, I have an image.
Yeah.
I am your child. I'm just born. You haven't even decided what I'm going to be called. But I am the seed of your imagination. And you live in a culture where quite a few of you have birthed souls through at a similar junction. You all decide to move to the midst of nature. There are no antennae anywhere pumping through any kind of artificial streams of consciousness. You are a conscious tribe, consciously conceiving together and consciously birthing through your partners a child. I'm sure somewhere your forefathers were Rudolf Steiner or other refined beings who honored life in this way, and you decide you will start from this vantage point, nature, to grow a culture with these newborns. I am your newborn. How might my imagination as that newborn, given that still in my blood and bones and in my crystal and in my being, I carry you, and you have come from a mixed history, her story of given stories, or ungiven, promoted or unpromoted. And I'm here, relatively fresh, and you smile at me each day, for you are so conscious of the love that you feel for me and your partner. It is, after all, some part of paradise that I am born into. I've even birthed in water. Let me give myself that. I've birthed in the most sublime water, and I even stayed in the water quite a long time before my first breath, for I remember how good that is. Maybe you had dolphin music running through. Just gonna decorate it. Why not?
Yeah, dolphins as
Dolphin music.
doulas.
Just doula. I have it. You had a dolphin doula.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, we lived on the shoreline. There's a dolphin doula and maybe a whale a little bit further. So yeah, and maybe we just stay there on the beach. But no, I want to go further to the trees because we've got the tree inside the story. So here I am, imagining and dreaming, and I'm just this little baby.
Ooh, so cute.
I am cute. What are your dreams for me, Dad?
Dreams for
What
you?
are your okay? So, what? Oh, of course, you are so refined as a being. You wouldn't project anything upon me, right?
I will do my best.
You would do your best. Okay. Wow. Okay. So, what would this day look like, Dad? I'm just new to this. I make dolphin sounds.
I'm not sure what you're asking actually. Like what
So
you are born now. What are my plans for you?
So it arrives out of the dream time. It arrives out of your it just because I was so struck by here we are in the dream time and the hologram and us agreeing to what reality we are in. You know, this is like the linear, you know, the fractal of where we've come from or whatever it might be called in this story. But I'm arriving at like here's a new fractal finding itself emerging.
Yeah, I find much beauty in that scenario you described, that situation. I would love to give birth. In like the ocean with dolphin doula, and like in nature, in the purity of it as well. Yeah, it sounds to me, I find much aesthetics in it more than the more common ways it is happening. But I am still wondering.
But just around the corner there's a village and maybe there's a city around there. But this is what we as a culture maybe do. We choose to engage with that beginning in this way, for we somewhere hold the belief that this might give cause to promote a more refined trajectory to the new story of Earth.
And that story can always be refined to a greater degree of aesthetics of the story. The relation to the placenta, do we want to cut it like that? How much time is the baby in the water? Because we can just be underwater for like 15 minutes when we are born. We don't need to breathe quickly. We can swim and even the dolphins in a way, their brain is more evolved than ours, maybe to let those beings guide the process rather than trying to be in a certain control of it. And of course, the degree of the pollution of the water, like
it's pure, it's so pure.
Yeah.
It's just outside of Iceland, but it's warm.
Yeah, like tropical
Iceland.
Temperature and purity and trust, no fear, like in the naturalness of the and it and these are just few more additions, and yet it can refine itself more and more. And I think it's there anyway. It's not like, at least that's how it seems to me. We even don't need to imagine it, because like now that we describe it, how I experience, we are revealing something that exists, and that is the natural trajectory of life that wants to come into harmony, and harmony is in a way a quality that is related to the wholeness. It is in a way how all the vibrations, how all the types come together in a certain symmetric ratio, and that is an expression of the quality that can integrate all the aspects. So there is that conscious piece that can integrate it, and I think this is just a natural outcome of it, like one outcome out of many others. But birth, is a very influential one on how the rest of the life of that being will be. And when such birth would be the majority, that would be amazing. I think that would be like like better than now, let's say, and maybe better than ever in history that is written. And if that would be the majority, and I'm sure also this can be refined. Like now we describe it in a way, but there are so many more nuances that we can add to it to make it even more lifeful.
And so even so I would have appreciated through my life, even though I'm my gratitude at how I was, and this is how I choose to believe it, what I chose to birth into was more than sufficient for my story and my continuing story to be nourished by life force, by affirmation of enough frequencies of earth to remind me that I may choose wellness and harmony. And I have not been given to such extreme behavior out of the we are called humankind. So I always go back to this as this may be the somewhere in our being that we are kind, and yet I'm thinking about the birth in the water. That I'm thinking even our relationship with water, and the fact that water comes back to us. We are baptized with water. We are, many traditions have this. We are touched by water. And now I'm thinking that when life force wasn't supporting me so much, or I did not, I forgot how it could support me. Let me put it, that way. That I would have loved a reminder from Source that I could dream up the best possible version of my story to myself. And I'm wondering, if I were to dream up the shaping of a new civilization, if I were so bold as to do that, which I think in some of my moments when I'm in the dreamscape of being a movie maker, I go there. So then I would maybe put little points of remembrance along the story, like chapter headings. Good authors know how to divide up a story. They have peaks of it. It's even the hero's journey. As a certain method of progressing as a human on Earth. But then, I'm just thinking what I would have put as what would have given myself as more prominent or more resourceful, more nourishing chapter headings so that I might remember to imagine in the most highest, joyful, nourished way, which I didn't always. For I did not see around me in my vicinity neither people nor resources or elements that seemed to support me. So just because I'm full of the imagination of those dolphins in the water and the good birthing, I would have wanted it to come through perhaps water. Maybe that's why so much water, maybe Wim Hof, and maybe that's why water is coming back into at least my landscape so much. The cold showers, the going to the water. Because I do tend to find that a little splash of water, which after all is crystal, and I am crystal, tends to give me new resource to be a better storyteller for myself. And I know you spend a lot of time in water, Aviv. So what is that all about? Are you storytelling in the shower when you're there for 3 hours? Sometimes more? I wonder.
I'm enjoying the sensation. I just love the feeling. Sometimes I'm thinking about stuff, but...
Are you dreaming?
Sometimes.
Are you a child or a baby?
It's a possibility, it's not
Or
necessarily.
a dragon?
Usually when I'm not meeting someone, I don't need to define myself.
Of course. Yes. So are you free? Are you more free?
There is more, in a way, there is more freedom in not defining the self, in a way. But only that is also limited relative to both. So sometimes like that, sometimes like that.
Because you always come out of there really fresh and sexy looking. So it feels that life force is somewhere redefined or like you're very alive.
Well, thank you. The water here is, it's just like, I think we all, after shower,
we don't all stay in there for 3 hours.
It's rare in 3 hours there.
Believe me, time and space. Doesn't he stay in there for 3 hours sometimes? Like, where is he? He's still in there. Yes.
If you would take over an hour, it would be more precise. You could align more to that.
2 hours? Between 2 and 3 hours? Maybe I'm given to exaggeration.
1 to 2 hours, so it would be the greatest percentage.
Really?
Yes.
I would say.
Many times I've been an hour in the shower. Like many times. Which is also long. Yeah, just enjoying the water. It's so good. It's like, I love it.
And it's free.
It's free.
Also in the ocean, it's also like in the summer. Now it's cold to stay an hour there, but in the summer,
an hour you would be in the ocean in Iceland.
Yeah, in August, July, August, I was an hour, and then I need to go to the sauna immediately after. I mean,
and what did it feel like after an hour in the Atlantic Ocean?
how did it feel like? Amazing. I just love it. There is the freedom of like more freedom from gravity.
Mm-hmm.
So that is I love letting my body having the relief of that and just moving in that way. And then the coldness also, I feel it crystallizes the body. So as more as I bring awareness to the body and present in it, it keeps the crystallization in the like refinement of the accuracy of the conductivity of life through the body. And then when it's very like after a while the bones become really cold. Like after an hour in the ocean, I go to the sauna, and even 15 minutes after, still I'm cold, like my bones are cold. But also the relaxing into it, it's amazing. Like also my brain a little bit freezes because I'm diving, not all the time, but so yeah, it's like I feel everything restructuring itself to finer alignment. Not huge transformation, it's just refining the alignment of everything and just the relaxing into it and feeling just life flow through. I mostly focus on that sensation and enjoy it. And yeah, sometimes thoughts can pass by. It's not allowed, whatever comes. And sometimes it's just no specific thoughts.
Somehow, and it's a real gift to just sense into where you arrive at. For I don't know this state. I've never stayed that long in coldness. But the little I know is that it seems to be the antidote to confusion. When I enter cold, not even that extreme cold, but I enter the waters of cold, and now I mean waters cold, the immersion of the avatar, the body in cold. If, and very consciously I do enter there as I'm in confusion, it seems to simply refine my state to bringing to the surface what really is. And usually it has shed a lot of what is not. And what is not is sometimes my ability to pick up surrounding confusion as alongside my own confusion, or to send me spinning in something that is not something that my being wants to start crystallizing as a reality. So it washes it away and refines my direction and trajectory again to what is within that Yggdrasil, that tree, registering as the most harmonious frequency to be in. It can do this more than most things in a shorter time than most things. Iceland has such a gift of this. I went to a talk just the other day in Harpan where the Prime Minister was offering us his insights of cold exposure.
Oh,
and
that's wonderful.
It was I was there with my 17-year-old kid with Alex. Alex went with me. I did it primarily for him, but of course I was gifting myself.
The prime minister, you said, was there?
The prime minister, the president was there. The president, excuse me, Gwynne was there.
Wow,
the president.
It's amazing that it's
He was
like
there
that.
alongside the New York bestseller, who was the primary speaker, and Andre, who was holding the point in Iceland for cold therapy, and you know, and seems to me to have such a beautiful understanding of this relationship with the mind has with the cold. And they, each of the speakers, including the president, the president himself, sometimes confuse these political stations. But he is beyond politics, actually. Of course, he is not, he is, yes. So there were several degrees of perception, you know, sitting there. There was gratitude for being on this point of the planet that can give me this elemental resource to remind myself of what I want to crystallize in my reality, even if it is all a shape-shifting hologram of various voting stations where I agree to what is and what isn't at any given point, sometimes in an agreement with another or in a disagreement with another, perhaps. But at least some tools are coming to the surface of my perception. So water, cold.
So in the way you expressed it now, I can find a certain refinement that would more explain how I experience the crystallization of the water. It's not that it crystallizes what I want. Because when I just conscious to the sensation and observing what life wants through me to be crystallized. And I think this is like what we talked before. Like, yes, there is the idea of individual, but this is the same idea like monotheistic. Like there is that one God, but transcending it in a way and not identifying as like it's tricky because who is not identifying, but it's just to open up to it's like the language is tricky there because I would define it as fourth person perspective, which is like a trans individualability. Trans individualability. Yeah, that can be
a good new word.
Which does include that perspective of individual as, which is in a way also more true than kind of like even more differentiated identity, yet there is not specific identity. So of course, if I go all the way, it's not even I observe, it's life observing, yet the technology of language, of like using words. So we do use these as definitions of like object or subject. It's not a phenomena. It's not a process. It is a thing.
Yeah.
And maybe even more evolved language would be like grammar would be only phenomena, that there are no things, but then ways of relations of phenomena, which is also a phenomena, but it's more complex. Yet I don't know how to make language like that, and I don't think one can even make it. Maybe that's a little bit a limitation of our languages. At least that we use words as a group of sounds.
Yeah.
Maybe
I was going to say.
expand it in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tones.
Yeah, like tones maybe, but even other senses.
Yes.
And maybe it's not even about the language. It's just like the perception of it. And we can express it in many ways.
So, do you think, would it be possible for the expression that is I holding on to identification with my story, but I'm being suggested a different framework. I'm being suggested a more transpersonal, coming to more the falcon eye view, even losing sight of myself, as one dear friend and wisdom keeper says, not being a point, but becoming pointless. So I even lose track of my particular point and become pointless.
But who is the one that becomes pointless? It's like there is some...
Okay, I hold on to that piece though. Okay, I'll hold on to even as I am in the falcon's eye, and but could I, and let's say that I can only do that for little pockets of time space. But as I'm there, could I suggest to myself to shed parts of my, for instance, trauma story? For if I am the pointless and I am the ocean, could at that point some very deep healing component come in, where I arrive back and am awash with a new sensation of pointlessness, but emptiness and more space to be...
It sounds to me like disassociation. In a way, because it's like, let's ignore the fact that there is who is becoming pointless, and still, let's say it's I. Let's just ignore that, and let's define I as pointless. Yet I find it crucial, and it doesn't matter.
But I've been trying so long to release my ages, my eons of time of something karmic or otherwise, something that does not serve me any longer. May I not let the ocean of oneness come in and just let it become mulch for...
Well, eventually this body will die and will become mulch.
Can it not happen before then?
I don't
more
see,
lightness
I
and
don't
more of
see
that
it,
crystal to just prevail?
I don't see it coming into greater wholeness by excluding any part.
Okay, that's very friendly of you, because you're you're asking me to befriend.
Just
again, you're bringing
to
me to accept
what is.
Yes,
and
I'm prone to escapism.
By the way, then trauma is an interpretation. It's not a situation. Trauma is an interpretation of a situation. Every situation can be experienced as learning something new, or as trauma.
Right.
And and also the fact we interpret an experience as trauma, this is just another fact.
Yes.
And
it can be evolved into a growing pain.
And then at some point we decide to forgive. And then it's no trauma anymore.
Right. Okay. That feels much more mature.
But the situation still was.
Yes.
And it's to forgive and learn the lesson, which
Yes.
it's like the only way to heal trauma is through forgiving. But forgiving, it's like in a story of trauma, I'm a victim and there is a villain, or it can be a person or whatever. It can be situation, which means I stagnate my identity in a certain aspect as a victim. And I insist on that, like as long as I hold to that story, I insist on that self-perception. And when I loosen the self-definition from that narrow definition, like in that situation, which of course it's multi-layered, it's not necessarily just in one event. The first trauma is birth in a way, and everything is just a kind of echo of that. When I accept the victim as a part, but in order to experience myself as a victim, it means there is a villain outside, which is the fact there is a villain is something that is a certain potential of the wholeness, but I'm projecting it outside. If I want to grow into greater wholeness, it's to recognize this is in me. And that's why usually for one, like in the slow but more like how it is usually, a trauma victim or someone who chooses not necessarily consciously to identify itself as post-traumatic someone, in order to heal the trauma, that someone needs to experience itself, him, herself, as the villain first. And then that someone can evolve empathy to the villain because, I am the thing I was judging so much. I was devoting my life to fight against. Then, now I can understand how it is to be in that position. So empathy can be evolved, and understanding and compassion. And the identity can loosen, like if that's someone willing to be honest enough with oneself and admit and accept that, and like loosen the identification with the victim face of the crystal of identity, and acknowledge also that face of a villain, then there is a greater wholeness coming in, and a natural outcome of the ability to have compassion to myself is forgiving myself, therefore forgiving the other, and therefore comes the ability also to integrate the other into the identity that comes as an outcome. But and this is just kind of like a mechanism with every trauma. It doesn't matter what. It's like forgiveness is the sign of really growing up from it, and ways of not growing up from it, the creativity of it, it impresses me a lot. Like we humans, we can go in many ways to stay. But in a way, this is also then nobility of life. It's like, how creative can we come? But it's still in very limited dimensionality of identity. It's that drama story, the drama triangle. Like there is also the...
But those are the most popular stories, Aviv. I was in the movie industry. If there's not enough drama, it doesn't sell, darling.
Well, maybe where we are at, I mean...
until now.
I think we all, like, it is necessary that we all go through it. I don't think we can skip it. If we want to grow more...
are we addicted to it, do you think?
And an identity can become addicted to a certain role in the drama triangle, definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's...
I mean, they've started making storylines, which are TV shows of drama, to even inject it when we don't have it in our own lives. So it does seem that it's a rather popular energy
Yeah.
running on Earth.
Yeah, it's popular, and it kind of shows society. Like, I think Freud was brilliant in his way to describe the society he was living in. I hear often he's very criticized and over condescended upon. I think the brilliancy of some aspects are not appreciated enough by many. Some do appreciate, of course, and it does not take away from the fact that his perception was very limited to the description of the culture he was part of, and he did not grow his theory, his psychoanalytical theory, like transculturally. It was very much in a kind of like the enlightened age, like the rationalistic mindset and the objectification of what is a human. And I have a lot to say about that in many aspects of the theory, but in relevancy to what we just talked about, these 5 stages of development he described, I think it's quite accurate. Yeah, we all move through these 5 stages, and then I think it continues. There are more stages he just did not acknowledge because it's not so much existing. And also the 5th stage is something that the age of enlightenment, what is called like 300 years ago or something like that, growing up from highly ethnocentric identity that allowed the Crusades, for example, to happen or stuff like that, that even that 5th stage was like, if we look 1,000 years ago, I think it wasn't so much common. Like, identity of people kind of have not come to enough growth to refine the identity from the fractures into something more whole, which is that 5th stage. But then I think there is also a finer nuance that is like, can be considered to be the 6th stage, and that is, in that stage, part of the quality of it is like no individual really. It and it allows a certain unity in this aspect as well, within as without.
Yes.
And every person I meet is reflecting an aspect of me.
Yes.
And how can I integrate it? And there is a whole new also trickiness in that, because how do I integrate that part that chooses to be unintegrated or that chooses to be separated, and yet it's a whole new type of problem, but it's also it's more complex because every stage our identity becomes something more complex.
Yes.
And I think there is also 7th stage, like that is even more rare, and so on. And same like an individual, there is the cultural average. And it seems that the cultural average is like, what would represent the cultural average? I think it is the structure of the social system we live in. and we can see it either in politics or media, and there is a lot of encouragement, or economy, like like there is a lot of encouragement of identity that is relative,
Yes.
like evolving that identity, either as ethnicity or as race or religion, or even it can go more complex. So we are anti-racist. So this is,
Isn't
more
it?
evolved,
Okay. Yeah.
yet how can we integrate that piece as well
Mm.
and not exclude that? And in the most refined element, I think it is the gender aspect, or like the sex,
Mm.
because in the more progressive countries, so a political party then needs to have a representative of like white and black, and male and female, and cis and trans, and homo or hetero, and like of every. Yet, because the attempt to have a representative of every stereotype that the culture is holding, there are two problems that are very fundamental that I find in it. First is some degree of compromisation of quality of abilities, of merit, for just the stereotype to be part of the party that represents some plurality. Another problem is that the group, that party, does not represent the ratio in the society of, like, it's like minority groups suddenly have way more power, because if, with exaggeration, if 90% of population is something, yet we need to include one person of that group and one person of the 10% group,
Right.
then suddenly those 10% have overpower upon the majority. And so it's more sophisticated, but it's still within, it's like the same idea of anti-racism while not integrating it. It's that hyper-pluralism while not integrating the thing as they are. And statistics is like the main tool there to twist the interpretation.
And it can actually separate us even further.
I think that makes it even worse.
Even though we're each, as a subculture, so wanting to be seen and recognized as we are, so much of value to the whole, and yet the system, the way it strikes that chord in the orchestration, isn't necessarily for the greater good.
No, it's just for the... Because there is an idea that an image of a party, it's like the persona, the mask of the party would be more, in a way, good in a certain social defined rules, if it includes of all these minorities, but the morality is highly conditioned and compromised, I find, in that sense, that it does not actually, like, why to support a minority group more than the majority? Why not just to support people in general without defining the identity? And everyone have the freedom to hold on to whatever identity they choose. But if I choose, and it even happens, like, people try to invent ways to become even more specific, more individual, more unique, because then they are even more minority in a way, and then they have even more power over.
So if all of this somehow is the need for the soul to be seen and loved, to be witnessed,
I don't think it is that.
It isn't?
No.
Is it a confused cry for acknowledgement, or what is it in me that strives to get more merit as the I that is individual, as opposed to being a part of a team or even a whole tribe that is seen?
I more see it as a survival mechanism.
Okay, it goes that
Okay, the soul, I don't think it needs to cry to be seen. Like the soul knows its unity.
Right.
It's
Okay,
like,
so it's some very, very specific part of identity, persona.
yeah, it's just more complex.
Yeah.
And because it's more complex,
Mm.
it's potentially also more destructive.
Mm.
Yeah,
But can we meet that? Because the need
we must.
is real for that being in me that at that point
Mm,
really, you know, for a while there, I really strived for singular identity, dyed my hair, really wanted,
mhm,
because I didn't want to be the masses. I grew
mhm,
up in London. It gets really, it's a hard struggle finding meaning,
mhm.
a meaningful point within that ocean of points. And so I'll do virtually anything
Yeah,
to strike, some unique chord that is identifiable.
yeah, we all need
Mm.
to move through a victim of society to integrate that piece, and then to realize we are a villain in society, either as individual, but it's more effective as a
Mm.
group, as a party, of whatever, and realize that we are coming as a savior, like, in a way, and that is also a holding on to an identity that is like morally justified,
Mm.
but the same, like I remember in the Black Lives Matter that was in the, it's like it's morally justified because I'm a black person of a minority and have been suffering of like what I blame as the white people. I am justified to steal from a white person's store or to burn a car because of a person because he's white. It's like
Yes.
it is holding on to identity that is stereotypical rather than acknowledging we are all humans, and seeing that in every person. This I think is the quality of the
Yes.
soul,
Yes.
and it just, I don't see it struggling to shine through. It just, we, we're just growing up into acknowledging it. It's there anyway, and we're just focusing, like holding on to an identity, but at some point it will be too exhausting. It's self-destructive, and so same with like I see it in the that third or fourth wave of feminism also. Like women's are victims of patriarchy, and it's most aggressively expressed in those countries that women have not only equal rights, I think, because of the intensity of the topic in the fashion. It's even, they have better position than majority of men. Yes, maybe there are a tiny minority of men that still holding on to a very privileged position, but statistics can be twisted a lot in order to justify whatever agenda, and I think every party is doing it. And the idea is, again, is not to focus on any relative identity, and acknowledge the essence through the simplicity. Like, we are humans. This is coming even more near, rather than we are a male or female or this country or that belief. But even, and also humanity, like the human ego that thinks it's beyond other life forms. Like it.
There I can recognize it the more. I find it quite complicated as a woman,
Mhm.
having only just, or feeling into only just achieving, being given acknowledgement from a certain percentage of my structure of masculine, feminine,
Mhm.
that I have come to my rights, that I am equal. There seems to be in me a child that wants to celebrate that, and that is human, to celebrate something that I haven't had. Of course, I am kind enough to not want that to seem out of balance with other forces, but there has to be a time of like me exploding into some kind of other behavior, which isn't necessarily, I'm not yet evolved enough, perhaps, to say, okay, well, of course, this is my natural state. I am in a structure. I don't need to promote my individual rights, for I should be at ease with having arrived here in the maturity of evolution of this given culture, that now I sit on the board of directors with, my... But inside of me may still be this kind of childlike, immature even me, that says, aha, there's some rebellion.
Yeah,
Still going.
And that's the idea. That's, I think, is also part of the quality of the sixth stage, or of fourth person perspective upon self. A definition of self that is, it's, I am a constellation of parts. Like, there are all the parts, and in it eventually in greater wholeness is to include as many parts as possible. And so, who is I? Like, I have also that in me, and I have that in me, and the growth of awareness is to just acknowledge all these parts and see how it comes together. It's understanding, in a way, that the structure, and it's not excluding the fact there are also more regressed parts. Like, there are, and that is, in a way, the even more integrated society or self that can include all those stages simultaneously.
Yes,
and
right.
We must, though, move through also that part that holds on to a certain ethnic identity. Today, the ethnic can be much more variated, and it's not just nationality, race, or religion. Also, the gender, like, am I cis, or am I anything else? And the complexity of being anti-racism, and it's like, or anti-religious. It's like, because everything have like, even in racism, which I'm not at all justifying hating another race because it's not the same race as I. Yet, what about feeling the unity with those who are my tribe?
Right.
Those who are more familiar.
Yes.
Like, the sense of family. I see it in more progressive countries. People are more alone. It's actually emotionally depleting relative to countries that are more tribal, but actually emotionally, in a way, on the daily life, it's healthier because there is the togetherness. It's like there is support with each other.
Yeah, but it's prone to erupting into immature expressions
Also,
when it comes to then denying others to be equally as beautiful a tribe on the other side of the mountain.
Yeah, it can be a reason for wars.
Yes,
it can be horrible also.
Because a unifying energy, like you say, is profoundly, I think, satisfying my need for relating, and yet the quality of that which I find unifying in that type of relating, in the best version, doesn't exclude that somebody else may have a different way of finding that unification. And that I don't call them out as being improper or lesser or something of another. They're just a different variety.
A different branch of the same tree.
Different branch, exactly, yeah. I think I was, I'm just coming back to just me and feeling very grateful that... So when I'm in London, I moved to a structure in London that it's a school It's a thought form. There's a religious component to it. Doesn't need to be identified for what it is. I have to wear a uniform. I remember that was rather curious as an Icelandic child. So I had to unify myself with many beings in that we buy white shirts and a blue skirt. But the culture that I'm coming into, okay, there's another subculture within it. We are only girls, but we are a wide variety then, again, of cultures. So it's like I've got all these different components coming. I'm asked to unify through a uniform, but I'm asked to expand hugely, for I have Japanese, Arab, French, I have I'm the United Nations, if you like, of resources for me to grow into awareness that I am but one of many, for I did not know it, for I'm coming from a village in Iceland on the East Fjords. And it's the impression, I think I go into this like tumble dryer. I see it like a washing machine, like tumble dryer of just, it was extremely uncomfortable. I do not find any other way of expressing it, because my identity was being trashed. I felt very silent. I went into I did not anyway, I think, find it that accessible to find human connection. I took my time upon it. And then given this variety, I gave up. For I did not know what I was within that composition. I had no idea. But then the image that came to me, when you talked about, Black Lives Matter, is that I chose to identify myself with a Nigerian friend of mine. To this day, she's a dear, dear sister. So all of a sudden, I'm in a culture that I knew nothing of. We didn't even have that many movies in Iceland showing us Africa. Yeah, but that's another story. And what we saw were usually just hungry children. But I remember that I would go for Saturday night parties with my best friend and exit that party, and someone would say to me, "Wow, you were the only white girl there." And I kid you not, I would say, "Really? Like, really? Was that even part of what I should have registered, or who would have registered that in me?" For I didn't. For in that gathering, and I really felt it, clear as, I was going to say clear as mud, because things were very muddy then, but this one thing was clear. I was one of human hearts. I was one of a field of human hearts, and I was having an extraordinary, waves of joy anyway. We're in celebration, it comes now to me as like deep schooling, deep earth schooling, that I should subside and wash away my identity even as a color of skin. And this really was my truth. It sounds like some ideological like story, but it really was my truth, because I loved, I found a culture that was actually richer than any culture that I'd known in this land. And I'd found a family. And then actually for many years I was only falling in love with Caribbean or African men. It went into a whole romance story for me of, I found another culture that was my culture, and so what culture am I? I wasn't evolved enough to have any words about this, but my heart knew it. And I would then in later years go to Nigeria again and again and fall deeper in love with it. And I am sure that culture found me profoundly strange and even, curious, and all the stories of villagers arriving, and running to me, Onocha, like meaning white,
Mm-hmm.
you're white. What are you doing here in the middle of Nigerian village? Unkwade. And I was the only white being there,
Mm.
and I felt at home. So like it just lives in me as the potential of a human cell,
Mm-hmm.
where nothing is, the cross-culturing, it isn't found anywhere but in the heart and the love.
Mm-hmm.
We shared not much familiar stories, except that, yes, my friend was of some abundance that gave her father she could fly across some ocean to enter another culture in London and find me, and us
Mm.
as hearts could go on a cross-cultural, cross-seeding revelation story. Gives
Yeah.
me hope for loss of identity and even more love. Like, yeah.
I think the only way not to let this love take over all of us is if we will destroy ourselves before. I mean, and I think there is greater chance that it will take over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's coming.
It's coming.
It's like whether we like it can. I don't know when it will be, but it's coming, and it is. There is a death, in a way, of the relativity of identity as the only definition of self.
Yeah.
And it's like every cell in our body have the same nuclei, the same code, like same DNA.
Yeah.
Like every cell in our body have the same DNA code.
Yeah. In each individual body.
Each individual cell have a nuclei with the same code.
Yeah.
And each individual person have slightly different code.
Right.
Yeah. But the same code in every cell. Actually, if we're not including the microbiome and the but the base structure of the body is from these cells.
Mm-hmm.
And every cell is expressing different part of the code, is creating proteins from different part of the DNA, from different genes.
Mm-hmm.
So few cells become bone, few cells become muscle, few cells become any other organ. And
That's what it's called, stem cell.
Stem cell, they are before, it's like
between DNA and expressed cell.
It's new cells that are ready to become whatever is needed, or kind of like but there is the same core, the same coding in the core. And I think it's like in a way a fractal, that the next octave of that fractal is like, so our animal body, this human body, is a certain singularity in a way. The next octave is the planet.
Yeah.
We are each a cell, each person is a cell in this planetary superorganism, and not just human, every life form. And it's the same idea, and it's what I understand from what you describe is that you feel that intercellular communication with this tissue there, and as a stem cell kind of like merging with that tissue, even though you have still some genotypical expressions of
Being a liver whilst I'm over the kidney.
yeah, and maybe we also have a certain, and maybe even cells in the body have certain degree of freedom of moving, changing.
Right.
Like it's not necessarily fixed.
Yeah.
There is some degree of flexibility.
Because we die and live anyway. The cells die and
Yeah,
so maybe we come back as liver and now I want to be brain. And
like
now,
reincarnation.
like reincarnation of...
Yeah. In a way, we can define the soul in a way as the code, as the genetic code.
Yeah. So I would, to that degree, if I really honor my nucleus,
Mm-hmm.
there is not, in that recognition, how would I defy my liver or defy my brain, or how would I lessen the degree of love or liking I have for that structure? For it is, again, it's the tree and it's the body. It all knows itself.
Yeah, so a tissue that is defying, this is cancer. This is a tissue that becomes disharmonic to the wholeness of the organism.
It doesn't want to take part in this.
It's not taking part. It is having a separated self-definition, and therefore it is competitive. It's trying to
it's
duplicate.
in survival.
Yeah, it's in survival.
Could it be called minority?
It doesn't have to be minority, because cancer can be like very large. I think this is just stagnation on relative identity.
What makes it not want to be part of the greater?
I think it's ignorance.
Stress.
Okay.
Ignorance to the core, to the nucleus.
It forgets the core. Could that be another word for it? It's forgotten for enough time that becomes its...
Yeah, it's forgot, or it was educated to forget.
Right. Something was invested, perhaps, to make it forget.
Yeah, an inertia of the previous generation, but then there is the first cancer cell, and
it can be
choice.
Reversed, right? If enough of the welcoming other field that remembers that cell being a part of their family.
Yeah.
If they're there kind of waving on the sidelines going, don't you remember? Why are you playing alone over there?
I think there is...
Or is it just, it's gone into like a self-defined, it will not see, it will not hear.
So I think love, like what you experience as that love with the people, like that love with, I think that is a force that raise up the probability of remembrance, yet every cell or every person, or if to take it to every cell, have its own, because cancer cell is also often happening because of accumulation of toxins that raise up the probability of the cell to become cancerous. So toxins in a person, it's like repressions or definitions like of the identity, like these stagnations, these holding on, which are traumas, literally, like interpreting input as trauma and not processing it. And like continuing the metabolism.
That's so sad that a cell should find itself in that. Perhaps it feels that it's giving itself exclusivity, like even putting itself aside, for it feels that it is, well, its identity is different. But as the other part of the equation, I'm wanting to call you back can I, and perhaps even that self has made itself even quite unlikable to me, before it speaks to itself of being so different, that I'm getting less and less recognizing it as part of the whole. But if I stay within the love that is all prevailing beyond understanding the story that is going on in that cell, if I simply engage through the heart, surely I may call it back. Surely I
Not
may...
surely, you
No,
raise the probability.
raise it. Okay.
Yeah, it's not in our
Or if
control.
all of us do it, if all the
So
cells,
the
more cells
probability
shine
even,
upon it.
yeah, it's exponentially raising the probability, but I would never say surely, because I think it's not in our decision, it is life choosing through.
Okay.
And it's like even the attempt to be in control of it,
Yeah.
I think
It's
this by
choosing.
itself limiting.
It is even, and of course, this is free will. It is choosing to be in isolation, even if the end result of that story is the downfall of the entire being, i.e. death. And that's a certain
Well,
reality
free
going
will
on.
is also like, is it free or is it just an expression of toxicity? It's a mirroring accumulation of toxicity that aspect also exists and need to be addressed to, just to come to awareness, whether of the organism within, like, because when we are more conscious in acceptance of cancer, then the immune system can address it more and heal it. If we, of course, nourishing it with fearing, it's like nourishing it, because it's kind of paralyzes whatever is around, and there is more ability for it to grow, for the cancerous aspect. And I think it's similar in society, that it's just being aware, like attention to, that toxicity exists. We must learn to integrate it and recycle it, like metabolize it.
Yes,
It
yes.
is part of us, and
It's very
not to-
complex. It's
yeah.
such a complex territory, because the first emotion I want to just offer up to that, because I'm holding in my awareness now a friend that, so she left my side, she left the side of her husband and her child through this given choice of her cells. And so I'm trying not to get emotional about the fact that there is death. There is death, and I hold that as part of my reality, and that is nothing lesser or greater to her existence, that she left slightly too early in my perception. That is my story. But I saw her. I didn't know that she had those cells telling themselves that story in her body for a long time. She didn't reveal it. She lived, to me, the most exemplary life from the moment, she turned her life around, presumably, now I know, because she encountered this resistance in some part of her being to come into the oneness of, some parts were forming a subculture. It's really hard to think about this. Really hard to, because I felt her spirit. And she was a soulful friend of mine. She was promoting creativity, promoting reverberation of excellent poetry. She was using, artistry to such a degree, and yet it did not bring enough love, as I'm now seeing it in the context of what we're saying, to those cells that chose to like terminate the entire story. I find that so hard to get my head around, let alone my heart. Because this is one of the greatest stories going on Earth, is the suffering through, we're in a big topic. This is a huge topic of huge distress for us humanity. People leave our side who are our loved ones through cells in our body identifying themselves as, or outcasting themselves. And if I'm supposed to come to clarity about how I could in the future support those around me that are in this, I'm not even sure if I dare go into that subject, for I feel the collective heart field around it. It's so complex. Like, am I at war with myself? How could I outcast part of is the nucleus that is all parts of myself, have I denied any part of myself to know that it has a mother and a father that love them? Is that where it's at?
I think, how I perceive it, I think every cancer is reflecting and representing what part of the wholeness of the identity is excluded of being recognized as part of the self.
By me or society or both?
So when it is a cancer that you have, so it's by you. And in society,
subconsciously,
it is it is repressed. It is in the shadow aspect.
I'd do something about it, right?
If it was conscious, you would, like, the system would find a way to integrate it into the self, and it can be through self-hatred, but this is self-destructive. So in a way, it's more effective from a survival mechanism to repress and to just be unconscious rather than to be self-destruct. Like autoimmunic, in a way, can be more like self-hatred, active hatred. But it comes at times. It is triggered by, but
I would be so scared.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I would know that there was a subculture, or whatever we define it as, whatever words, this is beyond words. If I were in recognition that something was not inclusive in me, I'd be highly judgmental first of me, because I left someone out. Or did I make someone an outcast? How did I do that?
We always create...
Is that my mind? Who did that in me? What did that in me?
No, it's a process. It's not like there is always cancerous cells that are created in the body.
Okay.
There is even a function for that.
Mm-hmm.
It supports cleansing of toxins. Like a cell receives enough toxins and then it becomes cancerous. So the immune system deals with it and cleanses the toxins also with it.
So it's like a red flag going up, and if it's dealt with, it's okay.
It's almost a sacrifice.
Yeah. But if I avoid attention to that area, which means the immune system don't go there, which means that cell can grow and grow and grow. And this is also, so this is in the body, but it's the same in society.
But how can it stay? How can it stay so dormant for so long? Because sometimes these things come up, and life is just gone.
It can
some
stay
days later.
Yeah, for all life.
How?
It's education.
I find it really I find it even hard to swallow as I'm thinking about all of this.
Why?
So the feeling in my body is I don't want to swallow this as a truth, that I may because I've had this best friend
Mm-hmm.
who leaves. I've got a friend who just lost his mother. I've got my aunt who left. Okay, so look at it in another way. So I, as a good friend or a member of a family of someone in whose being
Mm-hmm.
there is something that I see just as hugely lonely and suffering happening inside, so much so that it made itself a far corner, a dark corner, where it is not nourished by being part of the whole. And so here I am in another universe called another body. And would there be no signs of that going on so that I can reach in before it becomes an epidemic of pain or
Yeah, of course there
sorrow?
are signs.
What are the signs?
I think we can just sense it. We can sense, like it is, like we can just sense the life field, like to that degree. I think like our heart sensor is the most direct sensor to, like the pacemaker as the sensing of electromagnetic
So
fields.
you can maybe,
No,
as
no,
someone who
no.
knows, no?
Every animal with a beating heart can. And whatever way we interpret it, we do sense it. We all sense it.
So
The,
we should maybe allow ourselves to become more sensory to the environment that is another person in there, and what,
it's
ask of
to,
it something, or just love it more. Ask of
yeah,
it is, we feel something is out of balance. How do we reach forward without being imposing, judging, or even creating more fear in that being, with the suggestion that, is everything
but
okay?
that being is not, first of all, it's not fully in our control. It is sovereign. So there is
Yeah.
the element of its own choice. Like some cancerous cells become cancerous and like they sacrifice themselves to support some cleansing.
Hmm.
But
Okay, that's in the good story.
um
Or that's in the
What's good or bad in nature?
yeah.
Like
Okay, that's in the
nature.
easier version or the more harmonious version. So can we talk about harmony?
it's a subtler process. It's just one cell, let's say, comparing to
Mm-hmm.
when it grows and it becomes a tumor.
Mm-hmm.
But also a tumor can transform very quickly. It's not that,
Yeah.
it's mostly the field of attention. And I even met it with clients. I used to some years ago to I used to have clients that were with cancer, and that's the reason that so um I saw extremely good situation, and I saw like my auntie actually was a great teacher for me when she had the cancer, and she had also stroke,
Mm-hmm.
and then she was not so functional. So then she kind of allowed me to come and support, because before that she was like no, I'm gonna do it alone, like I don't need. And
Mm-hmm.
but then she was not functional, so actually my mother just brought me there. And I could sense where is the tumor. I could sense also the stroke. Actually, I could feel it even on the skull. And I told her, okay, we can do that. And but she told me, no, I released. I let go. Like I like she said, please no. Like she wanna leave. And that was a great teaching for me, because in me I felt like, no, I like we can do that. You just
Yeah.
need to want. That's all. And but it's acceptance. And I think this is the key element also, how to support them is just to accept them.
Yes. So.
and and it just raise up the probability. It is never in our control.
Yeah. Yes.
And I saw also actually, like when someone gave the trust, yes, like genuine belief, like like with hope there. I saw miracles happening, like literal what's considered to be like it was written as a medical miracle.
Mm.
Like I saw that happen as well, and it's purely it's like the power of placebo in a way is way more effective in that aspect, because do you really
Mm.
trust the possibility of life or not?
Mm.
And if yes, it can come as attention to acceptance of what is, attention to the body, accepting it as it is. And again, same in society. There are these groups that are a separated identity. It's types of cancer, and it's also types of tissues. Different groups are different tissues,
Mm.
but within each tissue there are these cells that become cancerous, that stagnate into that relative identity, and that's the agenda.
Mm.
And it's either treated by the immune system,
Mm.
or it's an area that is not in acknowledgement. And this is again the role of education and media,
Mm.
is how integral is the education, how integral is the media.
Mm. Mm.
And for example, like the hegemony is often like, oh, they are just taking over and deciding for us, and it's in a way disharmonic with the majority. But yeah, it's another type in a way of cancer, and it can be, or it can be an hegemony that have the money, or it can be the white male. It's like much in the fashion these days, and it can be it can be like in Israel, it can be the Arabs, or in um, some places it can be the Jews, or it's like according to religion. It doesn't matter, like race, gender, whatever.
Mm.
It doesn't matter. It's like a relative identity that this is the agenda, that this is where what drives the identity, like the avatar, the human,
Yeah.
to generate. This
Yeah.
is a generation of cancerous vibe within society, and it's similar within, and it will always be. And also in the body there will always be cancerous cells. It's part of the cleansing mechanism. The idea is how to grow awareness that can integrate all the tissues and to the finest aspects, and how to grow a culture that is accepting every possible version, while acknowledging the core stem we are all stemming from, and focusing on that in communication, in relation.
I'm finding like, wow, so there's a lot of things moving in my body as you're talking. One is that I have to go to the toilet.
Yeah, maybe we do a pee break.
But before then, because
Okay.
it's really like one version of my given reality is suddenly suggesting itself. And it is that, so within the given structure that I'm in, I'm quite a different cell. I'm quite a rebellious cell. I might even be considered a cancerous cell. Because if the collective of the body that is my nation or my tribe or my state sees me as too different, or I see myself as too distant to them in my version of being, I may exclude myself. I may even go to the recesses of a little village and hold up a sub-identity for as long as I can, because I'm that rebellious self that really has a notion about something else. And well, why not for the greater good? One version of that reality of the timeline of that is that either I become the annoying single structure of the body that will always simply be annoying because there's a greater whole that has no way or wishing to even give attention to that cell, who's got some faraway notions about even creating another dynamic within this body. If I'm the body, so I want to generate like a different chakra system or something outrageous. And there may even be parts of the other cells that come to attack me. And why not? Because it's it would be far easier to not have that irritation happening. It's itchy, it's irritating, it's not giving, it's not in, seemingly it's not at this given point in co-creation with the rest. It's giving out a different frequency. So also if it, comes to harmony and harmonious and toning, then this single cell, which at this moment is me, I need to recognize what's in the best things that are in harmony with the rest of the composition so that I can find myself coming out of this exclusion into the whole, still honoring my great notions of this other structure of, should we say, another chakra system or something outrageous in the human avatar that doesn't exist up until now. And I've got to find love with the pre-existing, even though I find them, quite frankly, cancerous. To me, in my perception, they're the cancer. I'm surely the new, vibrant, new body. I just don't have enough friends. Or identifying cells to, so what part of evolution in the body is going on there? And I'm still dying to go to the toilet and have a pee. So
we can do that.
Should we
and
pause?
then I
And
reply,
I'll,
yeah?
okay. Yeah.
So when you described what you described, what came for me as one is a question. It's like maybe that I hear you asking, how would you know if you are the cancerous or they are?
Yes.
And the other thing that came, in the body there are different tissues. So yeah, in a way, cells are gathering in groups of similarities. And so there is muscles, there are bones, there are specific organs that maybe organs have more types of cells, but they are creating a certain constellation. But within the connective tissue, so yeah, some are bones, but some of the connective tissue is blood cells. And particularly white blood cells, one of the types of them, and it's those who are learning the codes of how to create antibodies. It's cells who are alone traveling between tissues and learning different types of
She already likes it.
I like it. I want to be that cell.
different types of like invaders to the body, like cells or viruses or things that what antibody can be made for that and that. And then there are in the body, from the vagus, there are some open nerve ends that are just like stations of giving the information to the brain and receiving information from the brain. I mean, they hold the information of how to create antibodies, and like that the thymus becomes the school of specific cells that create specific antibodies.
So the white cells are reporting to the thymus? No.
Those specific ones, they are bringing the information to the thymus that becomes the school of another type of white blood cells that quite similar, and they can also travel through tissue alone, and they know how to create specific antibodies to a specific things that are a threat to the body. To like there is knowing how to recognize cells from that common DNA, from
And
that same
how would
code.
you describe antibodies?
Antibodies, it's like it's a substance that is neutralizing what is disturbing the cells that are from the same genetic code,
Okay.
like of the same soul, maybe, to say, or like the same source of
So
soul.
is it like a good therapist?
You
Just-
can see it as a therapist. You can see it also
Or
as
a
a
healer,
military,
or like- Okay. But it comes in to soothe. Yeah, its energy is soothing. Just a moment. Hi, Astrid. Oh my goodness, yes. We're going to the airport. My son is going to Germany. We're just recording a little bit, darling. So yeah, we'll bring this to a conclusion now, and I'm coming to drive you to the airport. Yeah. Are you ready? Yep. Okay. Right, there's that reality.
How much time do we have then?
So I think we should maybe wrap it up in about 5 minutes so that I can
Okay.
get ready for that reality, which is airport.
Okay, so to finish that metaphor,
Yeah, and maybe
then,
we can start again once I come back. But maybe it's very late by then.
might be.
Another time.
So to finish that metaphor,
Yeah.
um,
Antibody and
antibodies,
therapist and soothing energy.
it's usually perceived as something that fights against and kills the bacteria or the virus or like whatever
Pathogen,
invader.
toxin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And neutralizes it, and then different type of blood cells cleanse it. But there are these blood cells that are traveling alone between tissues. They are not even in the blood pipes, like these white blood cells. They just move through tissues.
Like spirits through
Uh,
walls.
yeah, but they are in service.
Energy.
They are in service of the essence that integrates the whole body. They keep the wholeness healthy, like it's the immune system. They make that
I
the whole
dropped out
organism.
slightly. What are those called? That's still
these-
antibodies?
No, these white
White
blood
These
cells
are white. That's still
that
the white.
can create the antibodies,
Okay.
which is an outcome of an information that is learned through meeting an antibody, and that's the natural immunity of the body, that it learns. Once you have a specific virus, these cells learn that virus, and then they learn how to create antibody for that virus, and then when this virus comes again, they immediately create it, and that virus even don't have time to reproduce.
Still not going through being sick.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow,
It's-
that's amazing.
So it's like keeping society in a way healthy.
Wow, my
It's
inner
that
society is healthy because it's being met
Yeah.
with
And it
that.
has the memory.
So,
Yeah.
and
of
then it
what
creates
happened.
the memory and learns by itself how to meet
Yeah. And then
any feeling, for instance, that's coming up, or a given change in energy that creates a dis-ease or disharmony.
it's
in
not
me.
even a change. It's something external, something that is not part of the society.
Yeah.
It's like invader.
It's still in it.
Yeah.
inevitable part of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
She cannot function
Mm.
outside.
Yeah.
White cell cannot
Mm.
be
Yeah.
outside of the body.
Yeah.
But she's not of the body. Like
Yeah.
Jesus, you know.
Yeah.
He's not of this earth, but he's in this earth, what they say.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So one of the
Yes.
things these cells can identify and recognize, and also in the connection when they are when the brain is in awareness to the body,
Mm-hmm.
then these open nerve ends
Mm-hmm.
are more giving information to these traveling white blood cells, because it's like stations for them to receive information, and then if they are needed somewhere in the body,
Mm.
they will go straight to that place. It's not like a random
Mm-hmm.
meeting,
Mm-hmm.
but it
Yes.
happens
Very effective.
only when there is enough flow of attention from the mind to the body. Otherwise, if there is no attention,
Yeah.
there are
Yes.
areas that are
Yes.
just unconscious, and they,
Yes.
and one of the things these white blood cells are fighting against is cancerous cells.
Right.
They are killing these cells basically, and then other white blood cells cleansing it from the body. So
So, even though this has opened up a discussion that I haven't got time for here, when you said they're killing them, and if I'm one of the cancerous cells, is there no dialogue that goes on between the cells that still gives me an option to come into greater communication, play? You know, can I come back to the playground with the other cells, or am I too far gone?
yeah,
Like,
it's cancerous cells as one that is too far gone.
okay.
And a cancerous cell would always be part of a tissue. That's how it would start. So there are many types of cancers according to what tissue it starts from. And that is a characteristic of a cancerous cells, that it holds on to a very specific in that aspect, and not focusing on the greater wholeness it is part of,
Yes.
but on
there's
its definition. And it can be a group of cancerous cells, but they are of the same type, of the same tissue, and it's not the variety.
Yes, yes, yes. And I want to, in the next chapter of this, because I really want another chapter, because I want to learn more about this. I still want to see if some white cell comes to dialogue with me as the
so it's
cancer
not from
earlier
there.
on,
Yeah,
then can I still transition or transform to
it's
being an effective part
it's
of
not
my...
it's not from there. I understand what you ask, and I wanted
Yeah.
to add that
Yeah.
a way for a cancerous cell to realign itself and becoming again part of the body, it's not at all related to the white blood cell.
Okay.
It is about realigning its electric field, its life force field, together with the field of the whole organism, which means to devote itself to a greater wholeness it is part
Okay.
of.
Okay,
That's the key thing.
wow, that's got to be the concluding word on this. Like, that's space for me to meditate on for the next month.
And the only thing that can influence the cancerous cell to align itself with a greater wholeness will not come from within, but will come from without, but not from any other specific cell.
No, from
It's-
the field.
It's from the field.
Yeah.
So it's like love itself, and it doesn't matter what you
Wow.
as an individual will do to that. It's like, it's choice of life. It's choice of something greater.
Yeah.
So it's not your responsibility.
And with this, we conclude
Wow.
the first session.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love you.
I love it.
Mm.
You can't zodiac sign.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am what I am. Born to that cute little crab.
Yeah.
They call it cat.
Yeah. Done?
The mic.
Mic drop.
Drop.